Well, I feel very, very privileged to be here, really, sincerely, and for many reasons, And first of all, because the great admiration that I have for UN Studio. The second very, very important reason that I had the feeling of how important is the school and how tight are the relationship among the student and the alumni, and there is surely a special magic around here, and I had really several proofs of that. There are some of my old students that are here, and I'm very glad to do that. Mr. Bono, where is he? Yeah. They have, of course, special privilege. And then there are other friends, and the other reason it is, of course, that I feel privileged to have met Joan Betten, and then I hope that we can build a relationship and a mutual field of research and interest. So I'm really, really very happy to be here and to share with you what I think can be an interesting journey for you. Will last more or less 1 hour 15 to 1 hour and a half, and will be an intellectual journey. Apparently, it will look rather easy. It's not easy. There are many things that will be built into that. The topic, it is as what has been announced, but you will see that we tackled that topic in a very stereoscopic way. First of all, what is very important for me is that the meaning that we present in some way represent at the same time the substance. So for me it's very important that whatever I'm going to show you to you, it is already available to you in this exact moment. So it's done out of the internet. The presentation is right there in this particular second. So we are live on internet now. And that is very important because you see that this journey, you need maps, you need links, you need points to refer back. That's why it's very important to have this link. This is my website. You just Google my name and last name, and you arrive basically instantly to this. We can stop this process probably, but you will trust me. We are in real time. Okay, so this is the lecture that has been announced, and each time I do these little tricks that I put a hidden link because I want that the people will follow the lecture, but I don't want that the other person know where the link is. The link will be created public next tomorrow or something like that, together with the audio. But right now nobody knows where is the link. So there is somewhere. People knows that it's somewhere. But where did I put? I change every time. Now I'm becoming more and more sophisticated. So for example, this one, you can start clicking on that, and then we'll bring to the official presentation of the Urban Green Line. But if you are patient, of course, in real time, there is always something that we have to be a little patient about it. But anyway, we'll work. We can do it, of course, from. We'll do it local. Huh? You don't know how fast is the thing. We'll do it local, but you'll trust me, okay? It is true. So I decided to put the hidden link here, exactly where the star is. Where there is the star, there is the link to the specific lecture. And with that, you will will actually have to do it. If it is an experiment, have to work, you know, because otherwise, what experiment is this? Okay, let's wait. Let's give the time that is necessary. Anyway, when we click the little star over there, will be in the lecture. You will trust me, okay? We'll do it later. Okay, so this lecture, it is called An Intellectual Journey an intellectual journey. So it is a long process. That's why we take a little time, and we have to build different elements, kind of different experience, in order to arrive to present actually what is the title of the presentation. The title of the presentation is this last project that is called Urban Green Line, an ecological infrastructure for Rome between past and future. In order to arrive there, we have to start to our journey. It is really an intellectual journey that I'm presenting you, and that is the map. The map is divided in 9 chapters. One is Italy and the roads of the imprinting. Second is the mystery of Etruscan Vie Cave. Third, believe it or not, is the birth of architecture. 4 is when dots becomes infos. 5 is urban green line, finally we arrived, an ecological infrastructure. 6 are the principle of this urban green line infrastructure. 7 are systems, IT, and projects on UGL, that is urban green line. 8 is architecture on urban green line. And 9, we go back on natural stars and magic rings. All right, since I'm coming to Frankfurt from Italy, I think, and since whatever we're going to do has to do with Rome, let's put it differently, as also to share many things with Rome, I think it was a good idea if we start to share certain common understanding. Well, I am a Roman person. I lived in Rome a great part of my life. I was born in Rome, but I was born in Rome from a Sicilian father and from a Venetian mother. And so the fact to be in Rome, for me, as many Romans, will consider, that place, the place where all the roads ends. We don't pretend that all the roads ends there for everybody, just for us. This is the place where we spend our life, and we consider that the center of something, of course. So this is just an idea of location that I think is important. The other thing that I believe is very important is to share with you this concept of imprinting, without which we don't really have a common ground. What is this concept of the imprinting? We need to build this concept to go on. Is really the idea, the imprinting as a word comes from natural science, particularly by biological and zoototic science, and is being very popularized by Konrad Lorenz. The idea was that animals create in the first moments of their life certain imprinting, certain patterns, certain structures that allow them to grow. They make some basic understanding how to locate themselves in the world, particularly in relationship with others, with parents, for example, and things like that. So the idea is that in the first moment of life, you create certain structure, and that structure will follow you along all your life. Naturally, this idea has consequences in many other areas, not only in biology. Now, I was thinking a lot about this idea of imprinting in my experience as an Italian architect, and it's sure that idea that the type of landscape and the type of culture and the type of history that we share creates a specific imprinting. And I think that is shared by everybody. Everybody has some type of original dream landscape in some way that is created in the first phase of his experience as a human being. But this idea of imprinting, I think it is interesting when he is referring back to Italy as a whole, and to understand a little bit why different regions of Italy are different from exactly this point of view of the imprinting. If we tackle our country from the south, we really start to feel that the imprinting on the south part of Italy is really a Greek imprinting in terms of civilization, in terms of understanding, basically in the way that the nature and architecture enters in relationship with one and the other. The key words are really definitely plastic, chiaroscuro, elevation. Architecture is really thought as some type of sacred object, as a kind of poem that is put it against the sky as a dialectic with nature. And chiaroscuro is very important as a way to express that idea, and the plasticity is another element. Why that is an imprinting? Why we are interested to use the word imprinting to say that? Because that type of childhood of that part of Italy, that type of civilization continues to grow generation after generation. It's like a piece of DNA that in some ways transforms and is also very fertile after many years. And architects still refer to some of that idea like their origin or their imprinting there. So this is, for example, something very well known is Libera in Capri, that of course cannot be understood without that idea. And when we go around and we see the landscape and we look at things, we still see that seed, that piece of DNA. Architecture as a plastic event, as a kind, almost a religious element that is put it against the sky and against the something that is outside. I'll show you one thing that a group of friends made. This is a pyramid, for example, that has been finished just last year, and it is put in Sicily. And this very tall pyramid is done by an artist together with an important curator and person that is really involved in many activities in Sicily, that is called Presti and Staccioli, and the pyramid, almost 25 or 30 meters, is called the Pyramid di Luce. So that thing is very alive. It's very alive in the way that artists and architects will refer to certain structure, mental structure, poetical structure, and being relationship of architecture with land. The north of Italy is completely different. If you use the same type of imprinting, you don't understand anything of the north of Italy. The north of Italy is really, has a completely different imprinting. Is the imprinting of the rationality of the military camp that arrives there as a colony and in some way dominates the nature with its own artificiality. The artificiality of the object, the artificiality of the architecture is absolutely crucial to understand what's going on in the north of Italy, and particularly to understand why the following kind of architectural research has followed completely different lines. We talked about Terragni briefly before. Terragni is an architect that surely demonstrates that with extreme clarity. This is the military camp on Como, and out of that the city developed. And when you see Casa del Fascio, you basically see, again, an artificial object, abstract organized through a grid system that clearly dominates the nature. That idea of the domination of the nature is a completely different idea from the kind of poetic dialectic that is on the south. So even if you have a huge mountain over there, it is clear that is the Casa del Fascio that dominates the scene. And of course, all the experience of the neoclassicism in the north of Italy and all the experience of Aldo Rossi cannot be understood if not in this context. Now we approach Rome. We approach Rome and we have to break some of your preconception about Rome in order to understand something. First thing that we have to share is that Rome is not a Roman city. If anything, Rome has an Etruscan imprinting. Rome is not based on the military abstraction of the Roman as a system of domination of land, but as in his soul, in his art, in his imprinting, the Etruscan way of thinking that is completely different. So the key words are this one, organic, earth, section. Because, why section? Because if in the north, the plan wins, the kind of domination of the abstraction of the plan wins, and then if elevation wins in the south, definitely in the central part of Italy, the section wins. The organic attitude of the section is the winning force that shapes architecture and creates its own imprinting, its kind of own original landscape. And each of us needs, I think, some type of original landscape. And we always in some way refer changing in many things as things change in life, but we must have an original landscape to play with, I believe. So in Rome, that landscape is Etruscan, and then at the same time, it is, of course, layered and fragmented. Layered because Rome is the city of history, is the only place in the world in which all the layers, basically 20, 30 layers of different time of history coexist in the city. They are sealed there, it can be activated. And on the other side, the only way that all these layers coexist is through fragmentation and through the idea that is the fragmentation of the vision, the anti-perspectival organization of the vision that will allow to put these things together. And all these ideas come together in the research of some architects in Rome, are kind of pieces of DNA that are alive and are alive in people, and that will continue to refer in some way with this idea. And there are others that they don't activate this, and they don't understand, from my point of view, what is the real soul of the city. By the way, the fact that it's really Etruscan has been proved by archaeologists from different decades now. Okay, so we had to build this concept of the imprinting, and we had to build this concept of the different part of Italy in order to start our journey. Otherwise, we cannot do our journey and we cannot understand what's going on at the end. Now, we are in chapter 2, the mystery of Via Cave. I will want to share with you something very nice that I discovered, and something important, I think, that I discovered quite recently. Although I was lecturing about different aspects of this matter for years and years, only quite recently a person came to me and very, very softly said to me, "Oh, yes, yes, but you know about Via Cave?" And I said, well, yes, yes, of course. Of course I didn't know. It's what I call a black hole. When somebody tells you something that you're supposed to know, it's a black hole. But I said, yes, yes. All right, and then, but I understood from the context that was something very, very important. So it was a piece of information very important that I had to cultivate. So I started to study what this little hint that this guy told me was. And I discovered a treasure, a big treasure for me, full of implication. And very few persons know that. That's why I enjoyed to share this with you. So what are these Etruscan vie cave? Why they are so important? And why is a piece of the complex journey that we are going to do, you are going to understand in a second. In some, I mean, first of all, the majority of the town in central Italy, not only in central Italy, but particularly in central Italy, I'll always put it on mountains, little mountains. Many times these little mountains are actually almost always by volcan origins and are excavated by a little river, little creeks that create that. There is one particular region in Italy, close to Pitigliano, on the northern part of Rome, that exists close to these cities, are really a kind of a Daedalus of streets, called streets, between many quotes, excavated piece of volcanic region, excavated by man, that create a kind of a Daedalus around this situation. And they look something like that. They are almost 20 meters high, for in some cases even 1 kilometer long, and they are excavated by hand. When you go there, one after the other, because some of them are very close one to the other, when you go there, of course, it's an extremely fascinating space that is emotionally very interesting to understand, but is more interesting to understand when you and of course, objects are the central terms of their interest. After objects, pieces of architecture, very, 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 very little. Only recently, topography has been started to really studied. But means the hierarchy, particularly in Rome, that we are so rich of things, that number one is Greek, second is Roman, Etruscan is not that hot. And particularly, it is interesting if you find objects, jewelry, piece of things, etc. When you do with structure, people, the archaeology particularly, are not much interested, because first, the other reason is that they love to excavate. So if they are already there, they don't really put too much time. So many of them, they said that these are streets, which is the most ridiculous thing that you can say. There is no reasons. They are not streets. They are not streets. They don't. They don't answer what we think in functional terms a street to go from one place to another. They are something extremely more complex. And why I get very interested in vie cave is because the vie cave, the only way to understand what the vie cave are, you have to start think systematically. So this is the first time that I put this word up. That will be the key for going on. You have to start to think systematically. That means that in this case, one action is not done for one reason, it's done for a complex number of reasons, and the complex number of reasons has a lot to share with profound meanings. So, first thing that we understand is what are the profound meanings, and then we understand what the systematic thinking behind. Well, the systematic meanings, one we understand, is very simple. Is the idea that the land is alive. The whole idea is that the land is alive and that human action interact in what we may call an ecological circle with the nature. Nature is alive. Nature speaks. Nature is the continuous element of referring of every action. So, what are vie cave? The vie cave are, I wrote it in Italian, and I did it by purpose because I prefer to translate in real time. So in the Etruscan world exists a complex strategy of excavation, a strategy that combines from the tomba rupestre, the excavated tomb, to the dronos, to the vie cave, to the solchi dei carri, which are these. This procession of excavation is that one that brings the deaths to the land, back to the land, and at the same time celebrates the path of the water. The death must have water to live, and this is the reason why you have all these coppelle, these little holes everywhere. The vie cave have been completely ignored by the official archaeology, at least for 3 reasons that I mentioned today, but with a systematic approach that we may call an ecological systematic approach, we can start to understand why these things has been done and the complex series of interrelationship behind that. We are moving from a word without meaning to a word full of meaning. The word nature is full of meaning, contains, we may call, information. If we want to use the word that we were using just before, is saturated with information in the moment that we can extrapolate that. But we extrapolate that with a series of processes that are systematic, are not linear, they are not strictly functional. It's a word full of meaning, it's a word full of interconnection. That's why I started to be very much interested on this thing. Because I really want to do these things for Rome. I don't think that I will do anything simple and linear like make a street. I will make an operation that is extremely complex. And I need to motivate particularly people, lots of people, to do these complex things. So now we arrive to chapter number 3, the birth of architecture. I refer back to the map so you are not completely lost, and then you follow that there is a path that we are following. We arrive to point number 3, that is the most scaring and the most interesting, depending from the point of view. We attach this in a circular way. I will show you an installation that we did with a group of young researchers that is called the Nitro. So in this case we see one work, a little work, but I think it is interesting. In a certain moment I was asked to do, together with my group, to do an installation in a garden, but the garden was rather particular because it was done by a gardener and a musician particularly interested very much in information technology. So that garden, it is a place that continuously combined information technology techniques with actual gardening. So for example, these are all speakers, but at the same time are actually live piece of nature. You can see the technology, the natural technology there. And it always interested me this because it seems to me a dots kind of situation that you can activate in different ways, and it was actually activated different ways. Anyway, they do a festival in this garden and they ask us to do an installation. And this is the installation that we're going to see. Since it is in the garden, you know, I was, years ago, of course, I studied Abbé Loger, and this is the famous frontispiece of architecture, the rebirth of architecture in the Illuminism time, and the mother architecture shows to the little architect what is the right path. So there is the primitive art, the simple trilite system, and then she sits on the ruin of the Rococo type of architecture. So this is the famous Abbé Loger frontispiece of architecture in the moment of building of the new architecture of the 18th century, 19th century. So I wanted, together with the group, to recreate a new primitive art, but a primitive art in which the issue of information is crucial. So this is a new primitive art of the year 2008 or something like that. We can see it very shortly. It's a very short movie, but you understand what's going on. We are in the garden. Some of these objects are the objects that combine sound with vegetal elements. This is the Roger frontispiece. Work on that, particularly two designers, Taguchi and Antonino Saggio. Technology is rather simple. It is an Arduino governed sensor system. The ark has been actually built in the garden with the minimum way that you can build any structure. It is a triangle. Didn't want to have a completely interactive thing. So it was a very interesting thing. So you are in this type of natural setting, but in which you understand that the information is a key element of the game. And then you can manipulate information and you can be part of the experience. So something that is not there becomes an element. It's not there visually, it actually is there very, very important. So information, it becomes the key word for what we're doing today. The book series is called, that was being thought in 1996, we arrived to 35 books now, has been called the IT, the Information Technology Revolution in Architecture. The idea that the information is the first matter of what, as a new generation of architect, do today, it is absolutely fundamental in whatever we are doing now. There is this new matter that is extremely important for architects of the new generation, because we are in the third wave. We are in the information age, and that is not something like turning a corner. It's an epochal of the history of humanity. So information becomes an element within which the architect has to understand in a complex way how to handle a new generation of architecture. I was talking about this in my PhD class. The PhD are coming from their own tradition. So they are not educated in the Saggio's Vangelo. They are coming from, from other history. So it is normal that they do question. So one student told me, but what is about all this mania that you have with information? Architecture is not about sheltering. And I said, no, absolutely not. But since the question in some way was a challenge, I had to answer to that challenge. So I have to recreate the birth of architecture from this point of view. I did not only do the primitive art, I have to build the theory behind that. So this is what I'm sharing with you, and this is the chapter 4, when dots become infos. Well, I was telling, you understand, I was talking to this person, human beings didn't need to have architecture in order to shelter. They were completely fine in cave. They started to have this idea when, for the first time, looking at the sky, they understood that those dots, those millions and millions of dots, one of them will have a meaning and will carry some information. So they are not just dots, but they are carrying meaning. In the moment that this jump was done, starting to refer to this word that can have meaning, they start to really put a dolmen against that specific dot. And that specific dot was so important because they can start to organize things around that. They start to understand how time moves. When is the moment to put the seed on the ground? Where is the moment, etc. So from that first dolmen, put it against this word of events and changing in a word of a piece of information, that is particular moment in which our idea, the idea that I'm interested to pursue of architecture is born. An architecture of information from the very first moment. And then we understand that after that dolmen, you put a ring of dolmens. You start to be more sophisticated. And then you understand that from a ring of dolmens, you start to put altars. And then the altars are another level of this. And after the altars, since all these things are put it on some type of hills, naturally, because are the place where you look at the sky, then you start to build a subculture about the fact that there are people that understand that there are these objects, and that these objects are the architecture needed to do that jump, that incredible jump, that bring meaning and bring infos. And of course, then you build temples. You start to do temples with altars outside, etc. And then around temples, of course, things may grow, and then you may have in the past cities. So when you go in Italy and you start to see all these hills, you start to understand that although from the archaeological point of view, these things has been found ruins of the medieval time or the Roman or the Etruscan, very, very probably they were being inhabited from the Neolithic phase or even before Neolithic. So I had to find some magic spaces like that because, because we need the spaces to do that. I mean, look at this place. This is San Galgano. It's one of the most fantastic places you can be in Italy. Plain hill, you immediately understand that from that hill something may happen. Some way of getting information is crucial. And then you understand that in the hill, in the process that I exactly described, there was a dolmen, an altar, etc. No? And then an eremo, and then finally this incredible, beautiful structure. And then like the memory of all these things are kind of symbolically kept there. So, oh my God, the sky is so important. Sky is so important. And then one night I was thinking, oh my God, in this explanation with the PhD student, I didn't mention, I didn't think about the place for architecture par excellence. If there is only one architecture that you have to bring with you on the other land, probably that's the Pantheon, is the architecture. So in some way, how you cannot refer to this thing when you look at the Pantheon? How you cannot start to really see symbolically exactly this action in which the sky is the symbolic element because saturated of information. I use this word again. And that saturation can be there. So during a class, I went there, I asked to my students half an hour of break, and I went there. Because I wanted to bring you a scientific proof, not just a photo montage. So, with the technology of today, we exactly have that is called augmented reality. So right now I don't want to play too much with the technology, but you know that with this object, one of the most fantastic applications from my point of view is called star walk. What does it make star walk? It gives you exactly the information of the sky at a level that is just unbelievable. But what is more, it can allow you to do the sky. So these are exactly the sky that are in the Pantheon, basically, because the two layers are actually overimposed one with the other, not with a Photoshop, but in real time, in real place. So I just wanted to do this for you as a little bit of proof of this idea. Because after these 3,000 years of history, this idea that architecture is in some way related to information, to the comprehension of the world in a systematic way, today has a level of power that is just incredible. No? Just imagine they build this to understand how the sun can work as a meridiana, and of course how the same idea of the dolmen, how you can check certain things of the sky that are a crucial information. Well, what do it today, with each of us can do today, it is just incredible. Not only the telescope of the NASA or whatever, what each of us can do, that is incredible. Playing with this idea of the birth of information, the birth of architecture as information. This is an image that I was used several years ago. It is Santa Sofia, that is a variation of the Pantheon, of course, that in this very strange situation, half was with this scaffolding that from my point of view meant that those dots are all dots that can be activated in the space. And actually this idea came from the fact that this picture was taken in a conference with astronauts. I was extremely excited for almost 3 months before and 3 months after to being invited to this conference with the astronauts. So for a while I was playing a lot with this idea. And the nice idea of the astronauts is exactly they do this, Space is not what we think. Space is everything. They activate everything because they live in a no gravity situation. So things is completely different from that point of view. So anyway, this is the book series. This is the book that is an Italian book that has been really wonderfully translated in English with a grant, and I will have the privilege to give it to the director of the school, John. It's an hard copy. You can have this book in many different ways. You can download for the iPad. I am one of the first architectural authors that is in the iPad. You can buy in every way, but I created a free Staedelschule copy for 3 days only. So you can download the book for 3 days, complete, all right? So out of this link, you go there, it will work, will trust me. I tried. Where is it? Okay. Now we approach, I think I'm pretty fine with time, I hope. Well, yes, I'm pretty fine, yeah. We approach what we normally think will be an architectural discourse or lecture of a person that anyway has the chore to motivate and to move into work quite a number of people at different level, because in this project of the Urban Green Line, it is different people involved, mainly graduated students, but not only graduated students. So they do their diploma on this project, but there are others that do either PhD research afterwards and others that do it in a more simpler way. So from here, you can have a low resolution English of this. This is the issue. It is completely translated in English and Italian and French. I'm not allowed by the publisher, of course, to give you a free copy, but it's a low resolution full copy, beside the fact that it's possible to have if you want to put your hands on it. Now, let's try to understand what we are trying to do. What we are trying to do, we are making an action on Rome that is, of course, strictly related whatever I said so far. Otherwise, why I did say. I said all these things because they are strictly interconnected with this design. Otherwise, they are no meaning. So this is something that you will decide if actually there is or not. First thing, okay. This is downtown Rome. This is the river. This is the part that you normally know. This is one of the periphery area of Rome, more or less 8 kilometers from the really hub of Rome, but is a dense part, rich of things. And particularly what we are interested to see is that this part is located between two large cones of greenery that in some way keep that mythological space of the Etruscan sectional volcanic origin that we in Rome, we have it alive because it enters into the city in big wedges. Okay, now let's see how long it takes to go to the Google map, because that will be rather interesting. I hope it will not take too long, otherwise we have to dismiss that. Because all these things is being mapped in Google Map. And the possibility to go around in Google Map is rather important because you can see it in real time. Well, it doesn't matter. I completely trust German, you know, being Italian, and it's better to try a little bit better before. But anyway, that is my fault. But believe me, all these links works wonderfully. So you can really navigate the structure in real time. You'll do it by your own. So anyway, this is one of the many drawings and maps that have been done to understand what is even the design, the territorial meaning to do what we call the urban green line. Well, to say it very simply, Rome, as many cities in the world, tend to have a radial system that in Rome is particularly strong because there are the consular ancient Rome streets. Via Appia, Via Aurelia, Via Cassia, all these are the old ancient consular Rome, the streets of Rome. And you know, how crucial were for all points of view these streets for the whole empire, not only for Rome. So if there is a radiant city, that is Rome. It is very important strategically not to bring all the forces, of course, in this radial way, but create what we may call horizontal rings. Horizontal rings, so are periphery, that will kind of rebalance these general actions. This is an idea that, of course, has been planned also at the level of city planning, with the idea to locate a series of new centrality around the rings in order, again, to create horizontal forces and not radial forces all towards downtown. So the urban green line, with this ring, it makes that. I have to say before, we couldn't open the Google Map plan, but I will give it another chance. Let's see if it can work in the background. Let's see what happens. Okay. I will leave it work, and later on I will see what happens. I have to say another thing that is very important. Urban Green Line starts as a project after 3 years of another project that we are still continuing. This other project is called Urban Voids, and basically creates, study this sector of the city and analyze where there are empty spaces, urban voids exactly, and in each of these urban voids, all my studios and students, there are like 60 players, they are moving in the territory, finding local negotiation with the association, possible client and promoter, and being a very proactive Danish type of action in which the architects are extremely active in the idea of promoting ideas. So I will teach them how to do it, and then so we have around 100 projects in different spots in this area. Urban Green Line came after, in which I made this jump of thinking more systematically. What it is, and it came after, this is very interesting that came after, because all our approach is a kind of bottom-up approach. We don't come in the old way from general strategy that are put it in the territory, but at the end, at the contrary, we start to actually work from the situation, and gradually we came up with some idea. So what is Urban Green Line? It is an ecological infrastructure. What is an ecological infrastructure? It doesn't answer. So in order to understand what it is, we have to understand what are the 5 fundamental criteria that govern it. And the 5 fundamental criteria is, number 1, multifunctionality. This comes exactly from what we said before with the Vie Cave. You don't do one thing for one reason, you do it for many reasons. So multifunctionality is the key. On a very simple way, the driving force of this multifunctionality, it is exactly the fact that it is a tramway. So it is a tramway, but at the same time, it makes many different things. And we are going to see in a second. It activated process, it activated architecture, it makes environmental-wise actions, and so on and so forth. So the basic idea is that it's a multifunctional action in which the driving thing, it is of course the fact to be a tramway, but the tramway, as you're going to see in the example, is a systematic way of thinking. The other aspect is a systematic green approach to the city. That means that it allows to facilitate all processes that has to do with the environment, from the most simple one to collect water from the rain, to allow water to go down in the soil, etc., etc., etc. But then there are continuity that we created among biological species and also among animal species, which is another very interesting aspect. So it's a systematic greenery approach to the city. Third, which as you can easily understand, is what we call information technology foam. That means, of course, all this systematic thinking has to do a lot with the presence of information technology, both as a technology and as a way to design. So in two ways, in some way, to facilitate certain process extremely complex of interactive design, and at the same time, because he uses and implements lots of technologies of all sorts that has to do with information technology. The fourth, he has to do to share with the living accessibility. That is the idea, again, that when you move, you don't necessarily always are a box that needs to be brought from point A to point B, but also the experience of the moving can be very important. So the experience of the moving, it is a crucial experience, and this is one of the other aspects that we think about it. And the fifth is in some way the most complex one, that we call magic crisis. And is a little bit difficult to express in one word, but what we mean is that there is a magic in all this operation done together. And if there is not that magic, the catalyst capability to do a jump that moves all the aspect, although multifunctional, to another level, another meaning of the thing, well, then why do architecture? If you're not interested in this level, you can do something else. Architecture, as we said from the very beginning, has something to share very profoundly with this aspect. Is the baby still calculating? Calculate. Now I'll show you some projects, so you understand better what we are going to say. Where are we? Okay, so we arrived here, we saw the principle, and now we see some projects that do more with architecture type and others that do more with IT information type of projects along the urban green line. Along this, we said, well, of course, the urban green line in this part, along this park of Centocelle, goes underground. Here it is the underground discovery of the thing. So basically what has been done here, the tramway goes underneath, but at the same time it generates a museum of the tram and the tram stops that are all there. So basically in this part the tramway runs underneath and it creates a tram stop, and at the same time it creates a museum of the tram, because Rome actually was the city that has more tram in all Europe. Mussolini take them out because they were kind of left. You know, he preferred to have tanks going around the streets in parades than trams. This you understand very, very briefly how certain technology that everybody knows we use. For example, here was the issue how you recreate a kind of continuity on the park. So automatic cellular data technology was developed to do that. And here there are other modifier and transformers and things that you do it very well, you do it every day, that allows to shape this underground cave-like architecture, or if you want to call vie cave-like architecture. Almost 3,000 years after. So you understand a little bit why all these things are for us a material of thinking in a rather complex way. Now I'll show instead a project, again on the urban green line, that has to do more with the implementation of technology. When often we all work around the idea of the crisis. We want to use information technology, using it not as an embellishment for a rich person in his villa to play with his friend interactive games, but really in order to tackle real crisis in real environment. My student, after lots of work together, etc., 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 you can imagine, they were very alerted. In a certain moment, discovered this technology in Japan. Some researcher copyrighted this technology. The technology transforms sound into energy, capture noise, and the noise becomes a form of energy that can create energy. We are all use of piezoelectric technology. In that case, it's movement that create energy. In this case, it's more interesting because it's the sound, it's the noise that actually can be activated, can activate a system of energy. So what you see here, you see a very interesting process. The tram, in some way, makes a little noise, as we can see. This noise can be tackled and through movable and changeable interactive sound barriers that in some way are within the system because they don't use any other energy than the sound of the tram itself. So this technology is one of those thinking that you think systematically about a certain issues, and of course, as you can see that, then you can use scripting technology and modifiers and so on and so forth to organize this matter within our time, technology, but I will also say our vision of the world. This is another project, another systematic project that again will show this way of thinking. I will finish in 10 minutes maximum. In this case, what we see is another process. The urban green line makes a 13-kilometer string. That means that goes in some part of the city that is extremely polluted and very high dense, and in other parts along the park, for example, much lower density. The idea is that in those parts at a lower density, you create degli stagni, that means some water ponds in which there is a specific alga as a name, alga stargamina, I don't remember how. This specific alga has the capability to create oxygen in like 20 or 30 times more than a normal chlorophyllian process. So the tram passing along these ponds capture this all extra oxygen, and since it's a systematic thing, what it does, it releases this oxygen when it goes close to these canopies. The canopies, of course, are in the higher dense, higher polluted part of the city. So along these are not just canopies, beautiful or less beautiful, useful or not useful. Of course, there are many other things, but mainly they are accumulator of oxygen, and the oxygen is released when it is needed. So these are one of the many other examples that I can show to exactly tell you why this is those 5 things that I described before. So this is not the tram in terms of, only a means of transportation. The tram activates many things, activates projects, activates the situation, is within a system. After my visit last year of the Mercedes headquarters in Stuttgart by UN Studio, I was really extremely impressed by the importance of this architecture. And although I edit this book that it is just out in the English version, Digital Vernacle, and 10 years ago, as an editor of a monographs book series, I edit the book Ben Van Berkel by a very good writer, Antonello Marotta, and this one also is very good, Andrea Sollazzo, a very, very old student of mine. But I really didn't really completely understood the incredible power and complex systematic thinking that was behind that building since I really saw it in action. I really needed to saw it in actions. And so from that point on, in many occasions in my teaching, I was really kind of push the student in thinking in some terms of that systematic thinking in terms of actual architectural. This is one case. We are talking about graduation work, while these are coursework. In this case, the tram has to overpass a railway is the only place where the tram has to do that for a series of reasons that I will not tell. Along this area is a very complex studies of diagrams and forces that take place there, and particularly they burn at least 3 projects. One is this one along here, one in this one, and another one is going to burn like right now along this area that is still in progress now. So all these projects, I have a systematic thinking. This is all the thinking behind the urban green line. They are part of the urban green line because the urban green line runs along here more exactly. And at the same time, the architecture is burned together with the urban green line. In this case, it's not a systematic action, it is something that is really built in. So this is one project, I will not go into it, but I can go a little bit into this, and you understand that basically this is a school with a new pedagogy. It's a school that is based on a series of processes that are not developed now in Italy. The tram passed through, and at the same time all the architecture has to be a very complex interconnected system in order to go with it. This is just one of the many efforts that we do on that. So, well, we always, at this moment, again, in a certain moment, I was thinking of this guy, of course, at the Mercedes-Benz, and I will try to refer back to what I said. I was looking at what we used to be, I used to be often diagrams, but probably it's not better to call rings or better magic rings. I was starting to think in this moment. And then in some way, I have to prove that idea of the magic crisis. Really that idea of the magic crisis that was so difficult to say why we deal with that magic crisis, and the action of involved with a creative process, either in art or in architecture or in other matters, has to do with that moment. There is a crisis and there is the capability to overcome that crisis. So what can be a bigger crisis than the death of this Raffaello? Raffaello is a semi-dead. He's a semi-god. He's now the closest thing of God that we have is Google. I often play with that. I use all the categories of God applying to Google, and almost all apply. So Google is not God, but it's very close to God. He's everywhere, he knows everywhere, he's super rich, etc., etc. We make things with that. But before Google is sure that Raffaello is pretty close to that. So this is Latin, and Latin is really the most wonderful language that was ever invented, because it has such a strength. And what this phrase says in the logic of Latin, it is just incredible. So I had a translation in Italy, in German, and in English of this magic crisis that is a circle. It's a circle that closes itself. Around this crisis, move farther. Read it, and we're done. Thank you.
Questions, reactions? I have a very practical one. How many projects are there in the urban green line? How many individual projects does the total plan?
Well, around, I would say, what we published in the ARCA are around 25, around a number, well, in terms of design thesis are around 20, and around project of IT we called are around 150. So what is published is around 10% of a base around 100, at least 100.
So, long and wonderful journey that you took us on, and it basically ends with the urban green line as a sort of manifestation, if not even a contemporary manifesto. And I think you had 5 principal characteristics of the urban green line. And I'm just wondering on a quite practical level how you maintain those interests in that number of projects that are being undertaken. Mm-hmm. Are those, by the way, also established before?
They are established before.
They're established before.
How do I? It is interesting that this question. Technically, so we are talking technically in terms of actual teaching. The Urban Green Line, technically speaking, it is the final project of a course that is called Information Technology Revolution in Architecture. The base of this course is to open the student to an understanding that there is a very strong relationship between the architectural debate and the use of certain technology and certain media. So they follow exercise to understand this, and at the same time they are exposed to the theory behind a certain architectural search and a certain technology at the same time. So the whole course is built like that. At a certain moment, at 1/3 of the course, the year team, it is presented. And the year team, it is Urban Green Line, and they are activated also in thinking in this direction. And the lecture are very important for my strategy because the students get motivated to the complexity of the issue with the system of the lecture, basically, and with kind of structure like this one, thinking structure and action structure. And then there is a little bit like in a studio, some process of dialogue we call revision in Italian. So there is a descript, what we may call in English, of course there are descripts in order to develop the project. But basically the whole work of the Urban Green Line is 1 semester work, and it ends with a public presentation in a kind of conference format. Then the student, some just 5% or 10% of that course go on in graduation. So in graduation, they bring the issue to a further level, and generally they transform what can be a very strong, nice idea, some that we've seen, but they are not really architecture. I mean, what we see, I don't know, here or here, these are more concept type of architecture. It's not really an architectural design, they transform in an architectural design project to be defended in thesis. So that's the system. What I wanted to underline is normally in academia, in Italy particularly, student work is considered pretty much an independent academic exercise, and generally the publication is paid by the state. For some type of funding, and generally this publication remains on shelters. That is the typical trend. So in this case, what is very, very important from my point of view is that all this work has been thought from the very beginning as a contribution to the city, to the cultural debate, and to the work, etc. There is no basic mention here that this is an architectural student or graduate work. It is a cultural contribution that arrives to an international magazine. We may love Larca or don't, but it's an international magazine. And it has been translated completely in English, etc. So that's the system, technically speaking. Yes, please, pretty loud. In Italian is better.
You showed pictures of the Chirico and Rossi.
Yeah.
And then this Etruscan monuments in the rocks. And they have something in common. It's about the movement in
No, in my case, why I use the Chirico, they may have an interconnection, of course, but in my particular case, I needed to create very clear categories in this particular type of lecture and organization. So while I was using the Chirico and Rossi was strictly to say that idea of architecture as an artificial object, a place in an abstract space, and that generally dominates nature. That is the idea that comes from the Roman military camp. Centuries after centuries still was there, and is not a case that that idea in some way was represented in some way by the Chirico and then actionized by things. Now, so that is my structure. Then if we can start to, to move things around, which is very interesting. Well, I didn't notice the sky, for example, in this the Chirico thing. We can start to build another story. Why not? We can start to build another story. But that was my story. I use it within this context.
My question starting from these pictures like the Chirico and Rossi, they claim there is certain metaphysical in their experience of that space, of that movement. I wanted to ask how it relates both to the old Etruscan.
They don't relate to the Etruscan at all. In my point of view, they don't relate to the Etruscan at all. That's why they belong to this chapter. North military grid abstraction plan Roman is a completely different. You see, it's over here. That is over. So that is a cycle that is over there. It stops. This is another chapter. Yeah, that's another chapter. So from my construction, those they don't relate.
And what about this thing? You have the arcades on both sides, the movement in Rossi and the Chirico, and on the Etruscan monument you have these markings on the ground, which maybe claim that they mark the movement. They're kind of markers of this movement, or even kind of related to time. And in your Greenland project, also, especially the one in the cave, you also have kind of sections which mark, which are perpendicular to the axis of movement. So I wanted to ask about, is it intentional? And
I think this is a typical ingredients that you start thinking diagonally out of a thing that I was thinking in a certain way, which is completely great for architects. I will tell you something more. The Pantheon is built like this too. It's a system of arcade, similar to the Colosseum. So we may start to merge things, to have another creative solution, and that is how you do research, you do new projects, and you do new things. I was not thinking at all along this line, but we can start to think about it, why not? And then we'll see where it brings. But I was not thinking along those lines, but there could be rather interesting. Yeah.
Antonino, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.